Hey, welcome back everyone, and thank you for joining me once again in Manny School of Art. In today's video, we are going to be looking at some easy ways of drawing the nose from the front view, the side view, and the three-quarter view. We'll start off by drawing the nose in basic forms of the nose represented by a 3D box to establish the correct size and the angles of the planes. Then we'll take a brief look at the anatomy of the nose to learn about the understructure of the nose, and then finally we'll transform a simple box into a basic nose. All right, so let's begin by figuring out the width and the height of the nose. So start off with a horizontal line. We're going to do a front view first. Then on a scrap piece of paper, put down how big you want your eye to be. It doesn't matter if it's big or small, okay? And we're going to measure that, and we're going to bring that line down this way. So we're going to be using the eye as the unit of measure. Now try to make sure that this is at a 90 degree. Now this line here represents the brow ridge. And we're going to come down 2 full eyes from there to establish the height of the nose, okay, and the average nose, okay? Now, it's important that you measure from the brow ridge and not from the eyes. If you're going to measure from the eyes, you need to subtract like half of an eye, right? Because otherwise, if you forget to do that, then the nose is going to look way too long, okay? So let's just go ahead and put this down like so. And let's kind of straighten that line up a little bit. Okay, so here we have the base of the nose. And if we bring that down, we're going to have the width of the nose, okay? And then we need to establish the top plane, the side planes, and the bottom plane, okay? So we're going to go ahead and split this here, and that is where the glabella is going to go. And we're going to use that to kind of establish the top plane. So working off my center line, right? It's kind of important to keep your center line. And I'm going to estimate where I want that to be. Okay, we can obviously change it. Now we know that the septum is below the wings. So we're going to come up a little bit from here and here. And that's going to establish the bottom plane, or actually the front plane, right? So get that to look good. It kind of looks like a diamond shape here, okay? And again, these are just to identify the planes. It'll make life much easier when you have to put things in perspective. And then you come down at an angle and you connect these to the side like so. And now you have the two side planes, okay? So sides, top, front, okay? All right, so let's take a look at what that looks like from the side view. So here, once again, we have the glabella, and then let's establish the back of the nose, which is here, and come out about an eye this way, and that can vary from person to person. And that will give you this triangular shape right here. Okay. But in most cases, the nose won't come straight out. It'll break off right here. So this part here, we're gonna cut that off. And then this right here is the same as this, right? So that would be the front plane. This right here is the same as this. But we also have to introduce, because we're looking at it from the side now, we know that the wing of the nose is slightly above the septum, and it's going to do this right here, and then it comes up to the tip of the nose. So this is where you can see like this curvature going that way and that way. Okay. And so what happens when we have to put the nose in perspective because the face is turned or tilted? Okay. So this is where the Loomis method comes in real handy. So let's go ahead and put this face in here, and let's tilt it upward a little bit. Come across. Remember, you're trying to form a 90 degree, so this is kind of a little bit of a review. If you want to know more about the Loomis method, check out the video that I did on the Loomis method. And then this will come this way. Cut off this side, and then establish your center line, your perspective center line, which is here. This would extend down, the chin would be down there. Okay. Then we need to establish where the eye is going to go. So I'm going to mimic this line here and kind of like figure out more or less where the tear ducts would be. And then we're going to change these angles, right? Because now we have to indicate that this part is going into the skull. And the width of the eye is probably going to be here. And probably about here. Remember that because we're looking at this side in perspective, we're looking at the whole thing in perspective, but we're seeing more of this. So this eye on our right has to appear a little bit smaller. And get this kind of out of the way so you guys can see what's going on. So this is our new center line. So hopefully that makes sense. Now this angle here, actually before we do that angle, I'm going to bring the edges of where the tear ducts would be down. And I'm following this center line here. Now we know from our previous example that the wings are going to be slightly above. And we know that because this is tilted up, that the tip of the nose is going to shift up here somewhere. So this gives us the front plane. The glabella is actually helping us. Let's go ahead and center that. So we don't need this line anymore. I'm going to go up a little higher. And then here's the glabella. And that's going to help us determine where the top plane is going to be. And then of course this becomes the side plane, and we can't see it on the other side. We can see a little bit here. So it'll look kind of like that. All right, so now let's take a real quick, a real simplified look at the anatomy of the nose. And you don't have to like memorize everything that you see here, but it's always a good idea, just like when we were drawing the eyes, if you're trying to create a likeness, then you kind of understand what's going on underneath the skin, underneath the structure. Okay, so what I've done is I have a drawing of the skull, front view and side view, and I'm going to basically show you what's going on. So this part up here, here's the glabella right here. This part up here is the bony part, the bridge of the nose, the upper part of the nose right here. Okay. Then as we come down this way, all of this is actually cartilage, and it's made up a number of different groups, so we're going to combine them together. So we're going to bring this down, following the center line to kind of help us. And then you have the side here. Okay, so here's our center line. And then right where the bony structure stops, right here, you're going to have a grouping of cartilage. And it kind of forms like a V on this side here. And of course, we could see the side of it as well from the front, like so. So we're just going to group all this together. Then you have additional cartilage that starts here. It connects all of this. It goes around the opening or the nostrils like this. And it forms the septum, which is where it connects back to the skull. So all of this is cartilage. And we're just grouping them together for ease. And then the fatty tissue that makes up the wing goes around like so. And that tells you more or less where the width of the nose is going to be. Now, again, all of this stuff is very generic. So when you start like learning how to draw individual stuff, make sure that you look at each nose individually, right? Because they're all going to have their own little nuances. But all of them will have these four things. Some are going to be a little bit more noticeable than others. But this is kind of what we got here. Okay? This group right here of all this cartilage is what makes up the bulb of the nose. So we'll start off with the bony structure, which is right about here. And then this here is going to come out. Oops, let's go ahead and switch it up. Blue. So the cartilage here will make that same like triangular shape, but it's going to come down this way. So let's go ahead and fill that in. Then you have the second set. From the side view, it's easier to see, and it's going to come around like so. And there's an opening there, of course. And last but not least, you're going to have the nostril, which is located like above this and back here. And then, of course, the opening would be here, which I should have left it alone. All right, let's see if we can bring this all together now. And let's put a nose on this little drawing. So I'm going to take a little bit of this off, but hopefully you can still see the main parts. And then we can start building this up. So here's the cavity of the nose. Here's the bridge of the nose. And then we have to establish how far this comes out. So I'm going to use this angle here, bring it out a little bit here. And then, just like before, we have to figure out where the wings are. So this is the width of the nose here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and extend this forward. How far, I don't know yet. And then I'm going to bring this up at an angle. And then because of the position of the nose, we'll be able to see a little bit of this right here and all the way over here. So now we have the main planes here. Top plane, side planes, and the front plane. Next, let's establish where the bony part is, which is right here. And then, of course, all of this is the cartilage, and we're just going to group it all together. So it's going to do something like this. It's going to come down. And then the nostril, which is back here. There's that step down. The opening will come here. And then this will go this way. And it'll connect to the septum. All right, now that we have the basic shape of the nose the way we want it, we're going to do a little shading, not much, just to kind of give you an indication of what this would look like. So first, I'm going to kind of soften up these lines because I don't want to see outlines when you draw the nose. Okay, we want to see shadows and we want to see plane changes, highlights, and midtones, but we don't want to see outlines. So the light source is going to come over here from the top right, which means that this upper portion of the nose is going to catch a lot of light. And this side here is going to get a little bit more of a midtone. Okay. Now we need to make sure that we blend the nose into the cheek. Right. So as I come down this way, I'm going to go ahead and start kind of like blending it. And then I'll adjust the shadows accordingly. Obviously, this is the socket of the eye, so that's going to be a little bit darker. And then, depending on the shape of the nose, right? So like this one is relatively straight. So it's going to look kind of flat here, more chiseled. But if it was a bulbous nose with more curves to it, then we would have to shade it more like we would a sphere. Okay. Now, this part here, see if I can show it here. Right here is the front plane. And it's not going to catch as much light either. So this part here needs to be in shadow. And then the nostril right here is going to start off in shadow here. Then it might catch a little light. And then it's going to go back to a shadow here. And we'll adjust all these. This is just the first pass. Obviously, the nostrils are going to be the darkest part. So right here, we want to make sure that they're really nice and dark. But as they come out, they might catch a little bit of light. So we're not going to make it like completely black. Okay, on this side, it's very small, so you can barely see it. Where this part of the nose, it kind of goes into the glabella, chances are that it's going to have a little bit of a shadow as well, right? Because it's going inward. And then this part is coming out. So this, we know that the bright areas are going to be in this area right here. So we're going to start to darken up this edge a little more. And darken up the front, especially on the front left side a little more. And then darken this up a little more. I feel like that light is too bright, so I'm going to soften that up a little bit. And then where the nostril meets the nose here, there might be a little bit of a shadow here. Because this piece comes out, there's a very good chance that it's going to capture a little bit of light right here. So I'm going to use my kneaded eraser just to add a tiny bit of a highlight here. Not much. And then I need to make sure that everything looks soft. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and blend this in a little bit. And I need to get rid of these lines, okay? I don't want to see those outlines. So if I can't get rid of it just by blending, then I would erase them a little bit and then go back in. Okay, we need to strengthen this up a little bit, but leave this side a little bit brighter, because this side is, it's kind of going on this side of the light. It's not facing the light, but it's closer to the light. And then right here, I need to keep that change of direction, but I don't want to do it with an outline. I want to do it with the shadow. So I'm going to take one of my dirty tortillions, and I'm just going to kind of like add a little bit of a soft shadow there. And then as the nose starts to dip a little bit in the front, this area here will have a soft shadow as well, except for where I might catch a little bit of a highlights. And then depending on the structure of the nose, you know, how many bumps and, you know, whether it's smooth or bumpy, then you may have to adjust your shadows. And then, of course, it also helps to shade in the surrounding area a little bit. So we know that this part here is going to be the cheek. And the cheek, I would shade like a sphere. So this little piece right here will be a little bit darker. And then we'll get into the mouth on the next video, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But kind of like that. This is the flat plane of the cheek at an angle, so we know that's going to capture quite a bit of light. So we're going to leave that white for now. And then a little bit more shadows to kind of help identify where the cavities are, the eye cavities. And again, I'm not working on the details, just like on our other videos. I just want to make sure that we are able to capture the three-dimensional forms without worrying too much about the details. So that is kind of like how all this comes together to make a believable three-dimensional nose in perspective. And without getting too far into the mouth area, I'm just going to put in a little bit of a cast shadow. Since the light source is over here, we know that the nose would cast a shadow this way. And because this is kind of like a cylinder, the shadow's not going to be straight. It's going to kind of have a, like, bend a little bit. I'm not going to do too much because we have to do the lips yet. But I just wanted to remind you that because this sticks out, protrudes outward, it will cast a shadow onto the face. All right, so that will be it for this week's video. Hopefully the information in this video will help you with your portrait drawings. As always, if you have questions or if you need clarification on something, go ahead and leave me a comment, and then I will see what I can do to help you out. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.